It's great to see you guys all today. Thank you so much for joining us. So, how do we help our people stay relevant in a world where roles are changing faster than ever? How do we make learning a habit, not just a perk? And how do we build cultures where reskilling is embedded in the way we work, not just something we do when we're behind? Today's panelists bring deep experience and fresh insights on what's working, what's changing, and how to build not just skills, but momentum for real lasting growth. To kick things off, we're going to start with introductions and a quick icebreaker. So I'd love for each of you to share your name, your role, and a personal example of a skill you've learned that has made a meaningful impact in your work. So we'll start closest to me and go with Kymberly.
Thank you. I am Kymberly Kuebler. It's Kuebler like the cookie. And I work for a company called Aimbridge Hospitality, which you probably haven't heard of, but we're one of the largest operators of hotels in the world. And I lead talent, which is talent acquisition, talent development, talent management. So all the fun parts of HR, but don't tell the HR people that. And a recent skill that I have learned, we just implemented a new applicant tracking system, and I learned how to build reports because I'm a data nerd, and it was a lot of fun to go in there and figure out how to see what I wanted to see.
Very cool. Hi, everyone. I am Melanie Stave. I am with LHH, an end-to-end talent solution company, and my role is the career development and mobility practice leader for North America. And my favorite skill I think I learned is how to pivot. So in instances when conversations with clients, with peers, with anyone, all of a sudden something changes you didn't expect, and you have to pivot and move forward from there. What was that?
Excellent. Great example.
That's awesome. I got to practice that too. My name is Arthur Lucien. I work with JPMorgan Chase. I am the software engineering learning solutions lead for Tech Academy, and I'm also the product owner for the Expert Engineer program, which is a DevOps program for software engineers. I practice pivoting when people ask me about going back to the office 5 days a week. I don't want to talk about that. A skill that I picked up recently that has helped me quite a bit was, I think, really understanding how to engage like large language models like ChatGPT, different LLM suites. Certainly as a starting point for saving a lot of time, I had to map something called the software development lifecycle. Won't bore you to death, but LLM suite picked up a lot of the heavy lifting for me, and it was a lot easier for me to get going once I saw some things to work with, so it helped quite a bit.
Nice. I'm going to piggyback on what your fact learning something new was. My name is Mike Sample. I'm head of global strategic L&D for JLL, just down the street. And I would say that I didn't know what AI was. As you were a late adopter, I tend to be that just by nature. So I decided that I would learn a little bit about AI. So I learned what a large language model was, and that helped me out a lot. And I learned so much about it. They made it part of my job. So I'm sure that no one's ever been in that role before where you just take it on. So that's the thing that I'm learning every single day. So any tips from you would be lovely.
Got it.
Love it. Hello, everyone. I'm Molly McKinstry. I'm the Vice President of North American Sales for Udemy, a large learning marketplace where we have 250,000 courses, so lots of upskilling opportunity. I'm thrilled to be with you all today. A skill to stay with the theme of Gen AI. We have 17,000 enterprise customers at Udemy, and it's important when I'm spending time with our customers that I can learn as much about their business as quickly as possible, right? I want to have the baseline of what problems they're trying to solve or what's happening in their world, and it turns out that AI is incredibly powerful at helping educate ourselves on organizations. You can summarize their quarterly earnings calls. You can understand the org structure and kind of who's who. So that has been a skill for me that is very, very applicable to my day-to-day role.
Yeah, it's amazing what a time saver it can be. And the more you use it, the more benefits that you see. And you just have to overcome your fears. Well, my new skill, nobody asked me, but is making tiramisu, as I shared with the group backstage. It doesn't help me at all in my work, but it makes dessert great. So, okay. So, all right. Are you guys ready for the nitty gritty? All right. So at a time when so many workers say they feel disengaged, stuck in their roles, or just plain anxious, how can a culture of learning provide an invigorating boost? And we're going to go right in the same old order. So we're going to start with you, Kymberly.
Fantastic. I think people want to be able to understand how they grow. And in fact, that's one of the things that we say is really important for what we do. And so as easy and transparent as we can make that for people in a way that's really understandable. So breaking it down for them, what it looks like, and into bite-sized chunks so that they can translate that into actual action plans.
Excellent.
From my perspective, I think it just shows that you care and that you're really trying to give some positive thing back to your employees so that they can learn something new. If other things are going wrong or bad, learning always just kind of makes you feel better that you learned something. All of our pivot stories and stuff that we've learned up here. So just showing and offering that to the employees really goes a long way, probably longer than we all think. But that's what I would say for that.
Sure. I think there's this fantasy that we have sometimes where if you're good at what you do, someone will find you, give you the things you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen. And I think the importance of a learning culture is prescriptive engagement with your future. I think in the absence of some kind of plan, right, partnered with your employer or partnered with your employees, you're kind of making it up as you go.
Right.
And of course you're going to be anxious. Of course you're going to be nervous. You don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
And so to help people feel at ease, I think there's nothing more important than having a development plan, understanding what skills are needed to get to where you want to go so you don't have to make it up as you go.
Yeah, really well said. And I think one of the things I learned really early was never tell what you can ask. And so when we started telling people what engagement meant and started defining that for them, I think we started prescribing a little bit too much and telling too much. So we turn to our teammates and say, what do you want to learn? That starts creating this learning culture because you're giving them exactly what they're asking for. And exactly what they've said is people want to learn. When they feel engaged, they learn more. And when you give them exactly what they've asked for, you can say, we're listening. We're giving you exactly what you want.
Yeah, I would just wrap that on a word that stands out based on everything you all just said is the idea of trust.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a lot about AI and kind of the, collaboration, if we will, between human work and where AI can help us be more efficient and productive. But I think when we want to create organizations that employees want to be a part of and they want to see career advancement and mobility, they have to trust that we have their best interest at heart. And if we are investing in their own skill development, I can't think of a more omnipresent way to show that trust. And it's not just for the outcomes that the business cares about. It's the investment in the human, which is the most, important resource that any organization has.
Oh, great answers. I think that's so important. I love that. Never tell what you can ask. I wrote that down, and I'm going to remember that one. That sounds like that could be applicable in a number of different situations. And I love how you all were talking about showing people that you care and that you're interested in their development. And I think it also helps everybody focus on the future. We're all looking on the future.
Right.
So instead of, what am I worried about today? It's looking ahead to how we can grow, how we can change. All right. So, part of what worries many people about new technology like AI is that it will take over their jobs. I hear this all the time in my work. How can leaders help identify where technology will create efficiencies and allow workers more time for them to focus creatively on other tasks and projects? And since you are the AI expert, Mike, we are starting with you.
The expert, but no one asked me any questions outside of this one. One of the things that we started to learn, I learned myself first, was what can AI do? And I think once you understand what it can do, you can say, if we did this, it might create some space for efficiencies in what we do. So look at what you do and then see what AI can help you do. I think some of the fear just comes from the unknown, the uncertainty of what it will take from us. To me, I look at it as an opportunity for this white space we've never been in before. With extra time, I know, gasp, but with that extra time might give you opportunities to do things you wanted to do or be more creative in the way you do those things. And I think if you present it in a way that says, what if I could show you a way to save some time doing this thing that you might not even like doing? What if I could show you some free time to maybe leave work a little earlier and have that work-life balance? Or what if I could show you a way to do something you've never done before in a way you've never thought about doing it? I think you have to have that change enthusiasm. Thank you, Cassandra Worthy, about what's happening, what's possible. And if you create that possibility, it's just like we said before, you can engage them in something new and then show them how. As leaders, though, I think we have to take the first leap. Understand how to create those efficiencies in your space, show them by example, and then bring them along for that change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to reemphasize so much of what Mike just said. But a fun fact or an interesting data point is actually that 55% of employees do not believe that their leaders are ready to bring Gen AI in a really intentional and strategic way to their business. So first and foremost, we have to lead the way. One, by being vulnerable and honest about the fact that this is new and show the ways that you as leaders are going first. Where are you spending time to invest in your own education around AI and the ways that it can complement all of the work happening across your teams? So you have to acknowledge the fact that more than half our team doesn't necessarily believe we know what we're doing. And they may not be totally wrong,
Right, exactly.
right? So we have to be vulnerable. We have to be transparent. The other thing, I love what you said is, think about it as an opportunity. Every one of us do things every single day that probably isn't the center of the target for, what fires us up or makes us, feel super fulfilled at the end of the day. What if we used this technology to take some of the things that don't fill the cup as much off our plate so there was more time for that strategic, really creative work? So the last thing I would say is encourage that entrepreneurial spirit in your organization as well. So not only going first and being vulnerable, but encouraging your employees to be curious. Think about the ways that they could use Gen AI and come back to you and, co-create a plan together.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of treasures there. It's interesting. So I survived the MapQuest generation. Okay. So for those of you who weren't there,
We're still here.
for those who weren't there, reading a printout, unnamed street turns into George's
Yes.
Boulevard on my way to a party. And when smartphones blew up and map applications became available, it was like discovering electricity.
Yeah.
We are in such an amazing time that we have a new piece of technology, and we haven't been here since the launch of the internet for business, since the early 90s, where there's a piece of technology that changes everything about how you do everything. And I get being nervous or scared, but you are limited by your imagination alone. There's this incredible white space, as you said, to redefine the nature of what it means to be who you are and how you work. And I encourage everyone, as I always have in any of these conversations, to take solace in the comfort of knowing that you can define whatever it is it's going to look like for you, because we are in this incredible frontier, looking over the edge. So brilliant stuff you mentioned.
Interesting from a mobility perspective. So thinking about companies, them looking at their employees thinking that, somebody's going to pick me and move me by myself. Mm-hmm. It's something that I think employees also worry about, not just the scared that AI is going to take my job, but also how am I going to move within a company? How am I going to become mobile? Is the company literally just going to put me into a machine and spit me out and I'm going to go work over there today? So I think on the flip side of how positive it is, I think organizations also need to be very open and very transparent in talking about AI and how it does or does not affect the role or the job or the movement within the company. Because if people are already nervous, they're already scared and excited, I think it's both an even thing back and forth. But if they think technology is just going to be the way they're going to move and they have no say in it, I think that's probably equally a little bit nervous. So I would say really to make sure that communication is out there and that, nice white glove service we all like to say we have and do, that it is applied when people do look for that next role or the mobility, that there is still a human touch in it. And it's not just you're being spit out of the machine and your job goes over there.
Yeah.
And I think from a practical element, one of the very first things we did in this move to a skills-based workforce is took all of our job descriptions and had them fed into AI to tell us what are the top skills for that job.
Yeah.
And we rewrote our job descriptions in a skills-based format.
Wow.
And it would have taken me months to do that.
Yeah.
And we did it in weeks.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Focus on the time it will save people to allow them to be liberated to do their highest and best use and the things they love most.
Definitely.
Be transparent about it, and unleash their entrepreneurial spirit and be curious. I love that. That's very exciting. When you can get people excited about it, it takes the fear away. All right, Arthur, you've pointed out that there's a gap between teaching workers new skills and then providing opportunities for them to use them. It's a kind of deployment gap, which I love that term. How can companies show leaders what to do with an upskilled employee?
Yeah. So I think this is the question of our time, right? There's this incredible push for people to learn new things.
Yeah.
And then once they do, there's a cliff that happens. And we tell them, go with God and you'll work it out. Right? The deployment problem, which you were just kind of detailing, is a discoverability one. How do I know what to work on now that I have these new skills? How do I find the work to do? The lost population in this are the managers.
Yeah.
We take for granted that our managers, even the ones that are good, know what to do when somebody gets their MBA, when they get that full stack engineering cert from Udemy.
Yeah.
How do we know that they're empowered?
Yeah.
I think a way to solve that is to partner with the managers from a leadership perspective when they have someone who's going through an enrichment program.
Yeah.
Whether it's an early careers program or it's a mid-tier or top talent enrichment program. How are we partnering with them? Providing skill sets, providing transparency to some of the problems that aren't solved yet. Providing time protection. Hey, this person's going to finish this new skill. Let's get them to working on some of our most important things. I think providing those tools for them and setting up a transition that's smooth and engaging is the best way to protect the talent from the cliff that's coming. And also to work on retention.
Yeah.
I know for the work that some of us put into postgraduate degrees, if you're still in the same chair in 36 months, you're leaving.
Yeah.
So why would we do that through an upskilling program if we know that's what's coming? So in my opinion, to go back to your question, I think partnering with managers, empowering them with tools and information, and setting up a transition plan, not just for the employee, but also for the manager.
Yeah.
If it means backfilling, if it means adjusting their deliverables because they're going to lose a talent to a mobility opportunity,
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to protect it.
Excellent point. What about you, Kymberly?
I would echo everything that you just said. And the way that we've kind of done that is when we think about what the competencies are for leaders, one of the key competencies is develop talent.
Yeah.
And so that's an expectation that we set for all of our leaders. And we talk about then how do we equip them to be able to do that? And part of that is building that skill and understanding it, but then also setting the expectations around what they do and then giving them tools to do it.
Yeah.
And so we have a program, ours isn't as technical, but it's an apprentice program to learn how to be a general manager of a hotel. And part of the expectation is their leader has a guide about how to check in with them, about the skills, where they're applying it, how that's helping them, what they learned, what they still need to learn. So we're giving the managers the questions to ask so that they can facilitate that learning along the way.
Awesome.
I love that.
One of
Mike,
the-
anybody else?
Do you want to go ahead?
No, also staying on the manager tune, that is completely 100% agree. They are the lost population in this period. They need so much more assistance than you can realize of being a good manager. I know that sounds silly and simple, but what does that mean to be a good manager? Can they have a career conversation with their employee? Do they even know what the talent pipeline looks like on their team? This one is a great succession. This one wants to work for Kymberly. This one loves their job and is staying set. All of those type of things really need to be provided to a manager to make them a holistic part of the team so they can engage their people. They can then promote them and say, Kymberly, here's Arthur, great guy interested here. You know, so it's really bringing them into the conversation, not just as assuming they're part of it, but really giving them the benefit. And that also means more continuation, conversation from HR and the other teams so that everybody knows what the plan is for the organization.
Yeah, I think that's the plan for the organization is really important. And I think that we're in this era of inquiry. And for the risk of sounding redundant, ask questions. One of the things that we found with leadership development programs specifically is that at the end, what do we do now? Right? Is there a project? When you finish that project, where does it go? Does it float into the ether? Does it get passed on? So we started asking managers, what would you do? Is there a problem that you would have people solve if you could? What would you do if you could? And we started doing these mini hackathons where we brought managers together to pose problems to groups that were recently out of mid-level development programs. And they started solving these problems so quickly because the information from the books or the context or the content is new. So I want to apply it. I want to get my hands on something real. And it's been nice for us because we're solving real problems in real time. And it's not just on the responsibility of that person from a leadership development program to fix it. They work with that manager, and it may not even be in the same division, which is one of the values of having a matrix organization, is that we work a lot of cross-collaborative projects. And that has helped them not only see what they can do with what they've learned, but also are there other areas or other problems in the organization they want to solve ongoing? That helps with succession planning and for their next steps as well. So just ask lots of questions. They'll come up with the ideas because we don't always have them, right?
Yeah. And you have to be open to them.
Yeah, right.
Once that happens. Molly, anything to add?
I just want to double down on the point of the importance of that frontline leader. And I think that, talk about flying the plane while we're building it. There's probably not a role in any organization right now as we think of reskilling and upskilling that's being faced with that most, right? They're hearing from the top down that we need to uplevel our employees. We need to be focused on skill assessment, validation, and deployment. And then who's helping them do those things, right? So I really think that's such a powerful takeaway from this conversation. In order for our frontline employees to feel that the benefit of that investment, their day-to-day leader has to be fully bought in and they have to be supported to do that. So that flywheel is critical.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, some of the points in the next question were addressed in this current one, but let me throw it out there and see if anybody has anything to add. And that is, keeping with this theme, how can employers create more partnership and collaboration throughout the organization with managers and employees to identify the needed skills and then communicate about putting them to use? Anyone want to add on?
I'll add on to that. I think one of the number one things that needs to happen is from the top. HR, talent acquisition, recruiting, learning and development, org development, they all need to be on the same page. They need to know what everybody's doing so that the talent management process is defined from the top and they have a plan. So if one functional area maybe is downsizing and X number of people might lose their jobs, but they realize in that part of the organization, there's 20 open roles. Maybe you can look at that group and say, what can we do? Can we skill them? Can we reskill them? We know they're a hypo or they're great talent or maybe not, and exit's the right way for that. But if they have a plan and think of this, that knowledge can then flow down to the managers and say, Kymberly is a great fit for this role over here with Holly's team. We know there's an opening. How can we skill them? How can we get them ready? So having that plan and having that be transparent so the managers know what it is, and then the employees understand that it's not the end of the world if all of a sudden they're sorry, your role's going away. They will know that there is potentially a next step and they can redeploy or they have a new role that they could potentially get internally. So as long as that cycle continues to connect and there's talk and conversation, what we see with our clients who do that is a better talent pipeline, happier employees, more connection with management, and the conversation with the employee and the manager is just so much more open. They don't feel scared to say, I'm looking for a new job. I love it here, but I'd love to grow. So it's just more of an overall talent conversation that connects and it works, and it just makes this continual happiness. And I know that's a weird word, but it really helps companies retain the talent that they want to retain and really get great feedback and commentary on development. That's what I'd add.
Go for it.
Yeah, I love that. And happiness is something, I know it's taboo, but it does exist. if I'm talking to CEOs or other entrepreneurs, I always say you need to believe it,
For sure.
right? And what does believing it look like? It looks like making a tangible commitment to reduce external hires, right? It's not enough to say, okay, we're going to have these programs or we're going to launch sabbatical programs so folks can upskill. What are you going to do when they're done?
Right.
How are you committing to them when they're finished? And that needs to look like organizational structure around how do we place these people when they get upskilled.
Yeah.
And it also has to look like a continuous reward system for the managers of mobility.
Yes.
Great idea.
So if we are making sure that our people managers who are good and they partner with us and they help us improve, if we make sure they're being rewarded in some kind of way, and I don't know what your structure is, then that will encourage that behavior and that drives culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's so important. And then the other piece of it, I would say, is you need to make sure that you are completely plugged in with your mid performers.
Yeah.
I think there is this extraordinary focus on the top 5%. And the fact is, they succeed sometimes because of or in spite of what we're doing.
Exactly, with or without you.
I think that your mid performer, the person who's good but wants to be great, they get left behind all the time. And so you end up losing a lot of talent who turns into top talent elsewhere
Right.
because you just forgot about them. So to me, having a renewed interest in the people that are pretty good, or the people who've been here for a little while, or the folks that might be in the same job role for 2, 3, 4 years, I think can save a lot of money in terms of recruiting, a lot of time in terms of talent deployment, a lot of focus for how quickly we need to be dexterous, particularly in this environment. And it's a culture builder. So,
For sure. I think the visibility part is really important. So people can see that it's happening. They can see that we care about where you're going, what you're doing. And I think that paying attention to what the future trends in those roles are. So like to your point, do we know where this one's going and this one's going? And then if you have a skill inventory of what everyone's good at, then maybe when you come up against that elimination of role or redundancy, you can say they've got these skills, let's plug them in here and start upskilling or reskilling for this new role. I think that it's really important to understand what AI can do. Let's just use as the example, what AI can do and then what the human needs to do. And those skills are really going to be different probably. And we know what they are now, where we're starting to see more and more of those separations. But getting people to understand that you do care about that, you see it, providing that visibility. And then for those leaders, I mean, a lot of times part of our careers that we forget about is the exposure for simply doing something that's strong or good or building our culture, or at least helping look at what's next for our cultures. That exposure of, we're the ones that really pay attention to where you're going next. And we want to give you those opportunities. That kind of exposure, I want to go to that leader and say, how do I? So that's a great way to do that.
And part of the way you do that is celebrating those stories.
Right.
When they happen and being able to promote that within your organization so people know that we're actually doing this.
Right.
And that it actually works and that we're actually investing in people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would just say, what's in it for me, right? Even the most loyal employees, even the employees that, bleed whatever your color is, they, at the end of the day, want to understand what's in it for me.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to answer that question with a lot of clarity and with a lot of accountability. So if we are talking about career mobility, if we are talking about earning opportunities, if we are talking about, all of the things that you've already heard, we have to deliver and we have to be accountable to make it happen.
100%.
I love that. Clarity and accountability.
Yeah.
All right, Molly, staying with you. What is your latest thinking on tailoring teaching methods to the subject matter, whether it's on-demand learning, hands-on practice, or other formats?
Yeah, great question. I obviously work at a learning organization, so I have a huge passion for the idea that learning is not a box check exercise. It is not meant to be a benefit that employees can choose to take part in or not. It is a strategic, incredibly fundamental part of high-performing, durable organizations that directly connects to business outcomes. So the reason I preface this answer with that is because it would be incredibly box check-like to assume that all learning should be identical, regardless of the employee tenure, regardless of, the body of work or experience. So multimodality learning is critical to really, walk the walk, so to speak, and learning being a strategic business investment. We know a couple of key factors play a big role in increasing engagement and also measured outcomes when it comes to learning. So one, individuality, right? It is not the same for everyone. We have to understand the nuance of each of our employees. So it needs to be tailored to their experience and where they are on that skill journey, whatever the skill is. It needs to be continuous. It is not a once a quarter we talk about learning, right? It's ongoing all the time. It's just part of the day to day. And when it shows up that way, your employees believe in it more and they begin to see the benefit. Data and analytics plays a really big role, right? So I think all of us have been a part of, something in our organization. We're not going to, go through any specifics here, but where was this big, huge deal? And then a couple months later, people are like, what happened with that? Did anything come out of that? Did we ever hear about that again? So really putting mile markers on the journey for what data we're tracking, what outcomes we're trying to deliver. And then last but not least, digital scale. Absolutely. People want to be able to learn when they want to learn, how they want to learn, where they want to learn. Yes, there's going to be moments and specific opportunities for hands-on classroom style, immersive learning, no question. But as a baseline, you have to have continuous scalable learning available for your people.
Yeah, sure.
Mike, what are you finding?
Yeah, I love the point. I was just thinking of how many times I've done this. But I think it is the first step, right? We just say it one time. There's one individual development plan. Here's your IDP for the year, or let's mention it one time and you didn't do it. Oh, I forgot about that too. So I think it's really important to keep it continuous. I think that it's part of the cycle. And I think too, it's making sure that that's not just a one-way thing. It's a dialogue that you're having all the time saying, is that working for you? Is there something else you want to learn? Have things changed? They probably will.
Right.
I think it's just maintaining those conversations ongoing. So I think that's probably one of the key factors.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, no, 1,000% what you said. And the funny thing about the IDP is when people leave, especially like top talent,
Yeah.
a question I always have is what was on their IDP? What were they working on?
Yeah.
And often we either don't know or we checked it once a few years ago. And when I think about continuous learning and I think about the ways that we're learning and the ways that we're upskilling and where that becomes tracked, that's why the document is so important. And I cannot emphasize enough, if we don't know what people are working on, we're on the clock until they leave. And that's a huge detriment to culture. There's a knowledge transfer you miss and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But in regard to like customized learning, you all know that's how you learn.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to stand on the ceremony.
Right.
Everybody in this room has had something that somebody else understood for a while and then something happened for you and you just got it. So there has to be a baseline of scalable learning, but you absolutely know that tailored, customized learning solutions that are going to be exponentially multiplied through the use of AI are how we're going to get there. Just learn with a purpose.
Yeah.
I want to learn this new skill, and then what are you going to do with it?
Right. Thanks.
That's the answer 60% of the time.
Yeah.
Learn with a purpose.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Exactly.
I love that.
Well said.
Totally agree. We're a very agreeable group. If you totally agree with everything they said. The one additional thing I'll say is the continuous learning, just little bits every single month, whether it's, join this podcast, listen to this blurb, read this white paper, join an e-learning, something like that keeps the conversation going up to November. Everybody knows November is Career Development Month in the US and Canada, right? That's the month for career development. Now you know. So in that month, what a lot of clients do also is that they really focus that month specifically on learning, period. And they have multimodal things, in-person, virtual, speakers, workshops, webinars, career coaching, all of that good stuff that makes that month very special. They also do it. November is also that month because it's right before the end of the year. It's right when you're going to start goal planning for the lovely IDP. And going from there. So it's that little blurb that just trickles out, little bits, little bits, little bits, little bits, and then that big togetherness in November. And then you continue from there. That's what I did.
I'm planning November in my
There you
head
go.
while we're sitting up here. But the only thing I'll say, because you guys nailed it, is what hasn't changed is that 70-20-10 model. And 70% is application.
Yes.
And if you're not building that into how people are learning, then they're not really learning.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
I
so
love the
true.
throwback. We use that every day, 70-20-10.
Yep.
Remember that 70.
Yep,
It's important.
exactly.
What's the 20 and the 10?
Feedback, mentorship, and actual learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Hands-on.
Classes,
Yeah.
books.
Sorry, I should know that,
Actual
but now I do.
The 10% is usually what we offer up. The 10% is that
10%
learning
is
part
what-
where it's
yes.
like, here's a concept, run and do it.
Yes.
Like to your point earlier, what do we do with this now? So then
Yeah.
the 20% is
Wow.
even taking it further, and then 70 is the experiential part, which is where it sticks.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about results. What are some of the innovative ways of measuring outcomes to see if the reskilling and other development efforts are having an impact? Arthur?
Oh, give me the tough one.
Straight to you.
There's a lot of ways to track it. And there's this, I think, misunderstanding that if you grow in soft skills or if you grow in areas that aren't immediately quantifiable from a revenue perspective, it just doesn't show up.
Right. All right.
That's untrue. Everything manifests in numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. So one way to track if upskilling is working is looking at the money spend for mobility opportunities and sourcing new talent.
Right.
You know, that's a tangible expense that you can lower if you're working with your populations. I can think of a bunch. I'm not going to monopolize it, but another way you can track that is taking a look at the speed of innovation within your organization.
Mhm.
If people are learning how to think differently, we should expect to hear different thoughts, right? And the fact is, you cannot get extraordinary results if you think in ordinary ways.
Right.
It's unavailable.
Right.
And so I could go on and on, but anything you can think of that you would normally measure, there's a dotted line to upskilling
Sure.
within your workforce.
Yeah.
And so anything you want to capture, there's a way to do that.
I think one of the hardest things is consistency. I think that's
Yeah.
what we have trouble with because there's always something new. There's always something we've heard from a conference, and we're probably doing some of that here. But I think going back to what you do, it's find a way to reskill, upskill consistency with consistency for a while, so you can see some of those results. Because I think that a lot of times that flavor of the week, that thing that we've decided is a new idea, gets in the way of the data we already have or we were watching for a while. So I think it's understand A, what you want to move, B, how you move it, and how long or C, are you going to watch for that data to move. That's the only way to see those results. And believe me, as fast as things change, I know it's hard to maintain that consistency, but it's really important because year over year, if everything's changing, that data is really hard to track.
And I think for us, we think of it in terms of lead and lag measures.
Sure, yes.
And the lead measure for us is actually internal mobility,
Yeah.
that we're promoting people internally because we know when we do that, we have better business outcomes, and that's our lag measure.
There you go.
So lead measure is internal mobility, telling us we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then we can tie that to business performance because when they are promoted, they perform better.
Yeah, definitely. Makes
Excellent.
sense.
Exceptional.
The ROI that you can see from redeploying talent is shockingly high.
Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal when you look at that. Outside of the ROI and the numbers, another thing that when you do reskill or upskill, you give people that extra information for them to keep developing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What a lot of our partners in HR, when we talk to, whom we work with, they can see that through different roles that people are applying for. They're getting further in the interview process.
Yeah.
If they have gig assignments internally, they're getting tapped for these new things. So people stay happier. They stay more content in their role, but they're getting new assignments. They're being able to help out a teammate.
Yeah.
So they see this continual connection and growth of an individual, so that the old way of thinking of development or mobility instead of just a promotion, that's no longer it. You can do more assignments. You can work laterally. You can take gig assignments. So that's also another way to calculate how skilling can connect to that.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Last point, because I think you all just brought up so many phenomenal examples of how you can actually measure the impact of learning. But I do think there's this almost undertone in the conversation that does the C-suite believe that, right? Do the business leaders believe and understand the tangible ROI that the business is going to get from learning?
Right.
And I think this is where, a community like this is so powerful, because I would say undoubtedly, yes, there is all the things that you all just said, measurable ROI, but I don't know that everybody actually understands that, right? And so that's part of our job. And everything we just mentioned, right? There's retention, there's career mobility, there's speed to innovation, there's employee engagement. Every organization wants to save more money or make more money or do both together, right? And if we can help tell that story, that the way learning and investment in skilling our existing employee population allows the organization to do both things, you've got your case study or your business case.
Yeah,
Just to
Powerful.
piggyback on that, an upskilled population is a public good. We understand that.
Period.
It's like clean water,
Right.
right? And you talked about C-suite and their belief. And sometimes it's clearly articulated. This is what our values are. Sometimes maybe not so much.
Yeah.
And you can go to new joiners and try to implement a new culture, but you need equatorial pressure if you're really going to change the culture and understand what the learning is. So those middle managers who've been around for a while, who've been through a few C-suite changes, they're the ones you got to win over.
Yep.
Because they're the most accountable for the deployment of the people under them.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about believing in it, it's not just, hey, we should invest in our people because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's expensive. It's extremely expensive to find somebody new, to enrich that talent. The 100 or so days before they're really fully up to stuff with the culture and what the work they have to do, it's most of the year.
Right.
So there's a clear and distinct line item from an expense save perspective around learning. And just to, if you'll excuse the trope, you don't go to Harvard and say, explain to me why you should go here. My kid should go here. Like people understand that.
Right.
So why are we singing for our supper in the learning space?
Yeah.
Like it makes sense to do.
Yeah.
The bottom line is something everybody understands. So in addition to focus, we're running out of time, but I want to get to this last two questions. So I think they're both super important. So in addition to focusing on learning the latest tech skills, it's often the softer side or human skills that workers need to improve, especially if they want to advance into leadership roles. Where are the areas in which you feel employees should focus right now, whether it's critical thinking, active listening, or other skills? And we'll start with you, Mike.
I think I'm really passionate about this. I said, we're starting to see the human versus the robot or AI separate a little bit. I think there's a couple of things that are really important. Problem solving. As much as we want to use AI to solve our problems, it probably won't solve all of them. So we have to be critically thinking, which is the next one. Collaborative. We have to be communicative. We have to really work together. Provide a sense of community, because we're starting to see that slide some back and forth depending on your RTO. But I think that it is really important to have these human skills. Be humans. We're still here. So reminding ourselves that sense of community is really important to most people, and sometimes most important to us. And as these great efficiencies are created and these white spaces are created, let's get together in those white spaces and create something new. Before the computer, we did the same thing. And I always tell my team, before Excel, yes, no one really knew what Excel was when it came out. We got through it, and now we survive with it. So same thing. So be humans.
Yeah.
Be humans. I love it. Molly, anything to add?
I would simply reiterate the fear that our employees experiencing about the unknown of Gen AI or where it's going to take us creates an opportunity to double down on the uniqueness that is human,
For sure.
right? Which is this soft skills bucket. So you already said communication, critical thinking, analytical thinking. The one I would add is change management.
Sure.
I think we've talked about that, indirectly here a lot today, but that we are on a change curve. Everybody is at a different place on where they fall. So really, as leaders, leaning in and being empathetic, being compassionate, but also being clear and accountable for what is on the other side of the change curve that we're going to go through together.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. In the time we have left, which is negative, could each of you give your colleagues in the audience a tip about how they can help their workers get more used to being a little uncomfortable in venturing out to learn new skills, no matter their experience level, or age. And we'll start, like we did at the very beginning, with you.
Sure. I think the easiest thing is to ask somebody, like you asked us at the beginning, what did you learn recently? Because we've all learned something,
Yep.
even if it's how to make tiramisu.
Yeah.
Melanie?
I would say turning it into something fun. Make it a game, make it an achievement, making it this business line versus that business line. See who can learn something new and what those skills are. And then to make it useful, that group spits out something that they learn that can contribute back to the business.
Love it.
Those two things, walk with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it with them.
Yeah.
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 Right? Hold them accountable by holding yourself accountable. Set quarterly milestones and enjoy it. Have the fun, go for the ride.
Yeah. I think that just living this experience myself, learn the thing you know least about. Say that out loud that you're a little bit afraid of it. Go for it. And then encourage your team members to do that. Let them see you do that thing that's hard. And then make it a community of practice. Have them go teach someone else. You go teach someone else that hard thing that you learned.
Everything they said with, I would simply add, Arthur, you said walk with them. I would say lead the way and, embody ownership of your own learning journey that you are on. Get in it with your team, be vulnerable, make it fun. Everything that all of these brilliant people said.
Love it. Please join me in thanking this incredible panel.
Well done, guys.
Thank you.
Well done.
That was fun.